Okay. Good Yontif, everybody, or I should say good Matzah Yontif. Today is Matzah Yontif. So we do have some people probably online. For them, it's still Yontif. So we can wish them good Yontif still. Shana Teva, Belina Chassidus Darki, Chassidus Tikas Seivu, B'Teichas Seimu. Moshe Rabin. There's a discussion in Svarim and Paiskim regarding if Matzah Yontif is a mitzvah of Malava Malka. So according to those who side that there is, so this is the Malava Malka of the Yontif of Yud Tes Kisleiv. Now there's also discussion if you have to have by Malava Malka, you have to have bread, or it's enough just to have a hot drink. So I'll take a hot drink.
They call it Malava Yalav Yalav.
Where do we have?
They call it Malava Yalav Yalav.
Malava Malka.
Malava Yalav Yalav.
Oh, that I haven't heard of. So, nonetheless, so as I said, we have a hot drink. Also regarding Shabbos clothing, there's a question if you can wear Shabbos clothing after Shabbos and after Yom Kippur. Some do, some don't. They say that the Rebbe Rashab would make sure to take off his Shabbos clothing right away, as the Shabbos clothing are meant Yeshakach to be worn specifically on Shabbos, not on Yom Tif, not on the weekday, and because of that, he would take it off right away. However, his son, the Rebbe Rayatz, followed Minhag Chernobyl, and he would wear Shabbos clothing on Motzei Shabbos. And that today is the minhag of Chabad as well. But regarding Matzah Yud Tes Kisleiv, it's not so simple. So therefore, I made a compromise. We'll wear the Shabbos hat, we'll wear the Shabbos shoes, and Mishkacha props, we forgot the kapot. So this is a mixture of Chernobyl and the old Chabad. It's fast. Okay. Our title that was put out tonight is Finding the Alter Rebbe in Parshas Vayeishev and the lifelong lessons that it can teach us. We're going to begin with what we probably all read already from Hayom Yom in the introduction to Hayom Yom, introduction to the festival Yud Tes Kisleiv, and we're going to emphasize certain points in this letter of the Rebbe Rashab that's going to, Mirz Hashem, escort us throughout the evening. The Rebbe Rashab wrote this letter in, I believe, sometime in the early 1900s, maybe it was 1906, Tafish Samach Vav, it was around that time. And he wrote the following: Yud Tes Kisleiv, this is the festival that has redeemed our souls. And the light and vitality of our souls have been granted to us on this day. And then he said a line which will never be forgotten by Chassidim and general folk all over. Today is Rosh Hashanah for Chassidus that our Rebbeinu HaKadoshim have inherited to us, and this is the Torah Baal Shem Tov. This statement of Rosh Hashanah L'dach was very novel. The Chassidim never heard this before until that time, again, about 100 years ago when this was stated. We already had Yud Tes Kisleiv for over 100 years until that point. And no one ever viewed Yud Tes Kisleiv in this light. It's a special day. A day is celebrating your Rebbe's release. The depth of the meaning was not very well known, was not very well publicized, to the point that when the Chassidim received this letter, the letter they obviously received not in the Rebbe Shabdan continues. This is the day of the purpose of your creation, to draw down a revelation of the inner dimensions of our holy Torah below. And also our souls are. So the light of the inner dimension of the Torah shines within our soul. From our depths we call to God. And here comes the punchline that we want to focus on for tonight's lecture. The purpose, says the Rebbe Rashab in the letter, the whole idea that we mentioned that this day has redeemed our soul from captivity, has entered life and light into our souls, and that it's called Rosh Hashanah of Chassidus, which has inherited us the Torah of the Beseinu HaKadoshim and the Baal Shem, is to draw us to the purpose of creation, to draw the inner dimensions of Torah into our heart. For what purpose? All that is for what purpose? It's in order for us to banish from amongst ourselves every bad and despisable trait of the natural traits that we have. Meaning, the purpose of Chassidus, is not just for us to grow in knowledge of Kabbalistic ideas, for us to grow in our bank information of Kabbalah, philosophical Kabbalists, even practical Kabbalists. That's not, neither of those three is the purpose of Teiras HaBaal Shem Tov. The purpose of Teiras HaBaal Shem Tov is to use the ideas of Teiras HaKabbalah in order to take it as medicine to help refine our character. That we turn and affect, that all of our actions will be a kavanah amit l'shem shemayim, truly for the sake of heaven. And this is the end of the excerpt of the letter recorded in the. So is this really all what Chassidus is about? Simply to correct our character, so a person be a little nicer, so a person not bark at people so often, so a person be a little less judgmental? Is that, we understand Chassidus gives that. We gain that from different areas of Chassidus. Is that the entire purpose? Is that the entire point? Tanya, 53 chapters, is dealing with many other subjects, not just the idea of being a nice person. It's dealing with refining our soul so we can arouse a love of God and a fear of God, and how to make the fulfillment of Torah mitzvahs very near and very close. So the question that we're beginning with is, how is it that the idea of refining our character that the Rebbe Rashab notes here, how does that encompass all of Teiras HaChassidus and its purpose? To the point that I'll mention an unedited and not meant to be publicized talk of the Rebbe Rayatz, but it was publicized as I know about it, but it's not meant to be publicized as a nice piece of information. It's just to prove the point, even though we can't take it literally in every sense. And that talk was as follows. The Rebbe Rayatz said that those people who study Chassidus for the sake of gaining in knowledge of information of Kabbalah, it is better that they didn't learn it at all. As the entire purpose of Chassidus is for a Jew to take the teachings and use them to battle his inner character flaws. And one who doesn't do it, it's like someone who was given access to the king's treasures, to make use of the money for special purposes, special programs, and all he does is he sits there and counts the money and learns and becomes a librarian of the money, like many libraries today, where you have to have a gold pass to even go in and look at a book. So what's the point of the books if you can't go in and look at them? As I said, this is not meant for publication because this could lead people to say, okay, well, haven't really worked on myself that much, so I'm just going to drop learning Chassidus, as the Rebbe Rayatz says. So if you don't learn Chassidus, you won't learn about this point either. So you have to learn this as well. Eventually you come to this, and you have to learn for the sake of change. So let's begin with this week's Parsha. As the Shloach HaKadosh writes in Shnei Luchos Habris, and the Rebbe brought this many times in Sichos, that the occurrences that happen in Jewish history coincide spiritually with the Parshas HaShavua. And therefore the question that is asked, and that the Rebbe asked in Fabregens, was, what is the connection between Parshas Vayeishev and the story of the Alter Rebbe. So we're going to learn a little Chumash. Vayeishev Yaakov beretz Megurei Aviv beretz Canaan. Yaakov, after a quite tumultuous event that happened with his brother Esav, and then he went through the whole story with Dinah. The man had a rough life. He finally wanted to settle in the land of his fathers, in Hebron. He moved to Hebron. He wanted to settle, to have, relax, put down his feet, enjoy life, live the American dream, soft. After so many years. How many years? How old was he already? He was 84 when he got married, and this was already 22 years later. So the man is already very old. It's about time you get some royal treatment, a senior citizen development, senior citizen place. But as the Medrash Rabbah says, Kotza love Roigzai Shel Yosef, Rashi brings this. And Rashi quotes the Medrash Rabbah, which states, it's not enough, is it not enough, does it not suffice that the tzaddikim will receive the world to come, that they ask also to have a good time down here? Miyad kafza le'reg shel Yosef, immediately the wrath of Yosef, the story of Yosef occurred. And this is something that on the face of things doesn't make any sense. If a person is a tzaddik, he's doing God's will, let him get both worlds. Let him get this world, let him get the next world. What is so wrong with asking not to have your daughter taken by a Gentile, not to have your brother trying to kill you, not to have your son kidnapped? What's wrong with that? I mean, do you have to have that even if you're a tzaddik? I mean, what does this mean? What was wrong with the bakasha, with the request of Yaakov Avinu? So remind me, make sure I get back to this point. Then continues. Eila told us Yaakov Yosef ben Shvas Shana. Oyeroyes Echa Batzoin Vunaras b'nei Bilavas b'nei Zilpin Sheyavid b'Yosef Estibas Malavi. Yosef was a young lad at this point. We know that his mother, he was orphaned at around the age of 6 years old, as he was born 14 years into the work of Yaakov's occupation for Lavan. And 6 years, they worked for him for 6 years, and at the total amount of 20 years, they traveled. So he was about 6 years old when his mother passed away. He was brought up by Bilhah, by his mother's Shifcha. And when he was 17 years old, he felt himself as the chosen child, and as a child that, sometimes we all have in a family that kid who feels he has a special connection, and he becomes the liaison between all the criminal acts of the other siblings and the parents. His son becomes the prosecutor, usually not the defense, usually the prosecutor, and this is what was happening with Yosef. Yosef, at 17 years old, begins speaking Lashon Hara and bringing bad reports to his father Yaakov Avinu. As we know, Rashi brings, there were three types of Lashon Hara that were said. One, that they were intimate with Gili Arayis, they were with other women. Another, that they ate non-kosher food. And in all of these reports, Rashi points out. Correct. Yeah, that's the third thing, that they treated the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah improperly. So all these reports that were brought to Yaakov Avinu, as Rashi points out, in the end, they boomeranged against Yosef himself, as his punishment later on was received in all these three types of ways. Let's continue. Yaakov, in this sense, is called Yisrael. He had a favorite child who was Yosef. And as Chazal point out from this, that one should learn from Yaakov what not to do. Something that a lot of kids today learn from their parents. They learn tremendously what not to do. At least that's what they say. I get married, when I grew up, I'm not going to do this. And then before they know it, I'm exactly like my father or my mother. Anyways, excluding present company, of course.
It's good to be lucky.
But also like saying is passive. Some parents. But also like saying is passive. So this it says, Chazal tell us, we know Yaakov was our ancestors, don't copy him in this. Don't have a favorite child. Make everybody equal. Don't give one more than another. You're giving out a prize, a treat. Give everyone the same treat. You bought one kid a big lollipop, you got to buy everyone a big lollipop. That's why the answer is just don't give out anything to anyone. Otherwise, it's going to cost you a lot. Also, like saying is passive.
This is a question I can't understand. Jacob is shlemus, he's everything. I don't believe that he did that. There must be so many levels of reality that we're in. I don't believe he did that. I can't believe he did that. Of course he didn't do that.
Well, we didn't finish with what he did. But also, like saying is passive, he made for him this beautiful robe. Me'il says the Mefarshim. A beautiful silk or whatever material it was made from, but it was very exquisite. It was very elegant. That all brothers knew that this was not just a present, a nice. They usually don't get so jealous, especially the Shvatim. What do they care if someone got a nicer coat than them? This represented, Yaakov was in essence appointing him, this was the mantle of leadership, appointing Yosef as the leader of the family, as the next in line. This was like the robe that the Rebbe, that the king gives the prince. And we find, as Rashi points out, that in this name of this me'il, of this coat, was actually hinted all the negative things that it caused. K, Plishtim, which Yosef was sold to. Samach, for Potiphar, to whom Yosef was sold to. Samach stands for Seichrim, he was sold to the different merchants. Yishmaelim, etc. So all of Yosef's tzaras were hinted to in the Ksainis Pasim, and they were a result of the fact that Yaakov showed favoritism. So because of this, Chazal go out of their way and tell us, don't learn the lesson from here that you should favor a child. Nonetheless, obviously, to answer your question, the Yaakov Avinu wasn't just doing this out of he was emotionally overcome with love, and he just felt uncontrollable love to do this to his son. But it's really because, to begin with, Yaakov only married, came into the whole mission with love on the scammer for the sake of Rachel, for the sake of Yosef. That was the whole purpose of why he got into this business to begin with. So he wanted to make a point and let everybody know that Yosef is the Tachlis. We learned this last week. We went through in the talk of the difference between the brothers and Yosef and why Yaakov disliked. 2 weeks ago, why Yaakov disliked Leah and liked Rachel. It all connects with that, and we can't go further into it now. But Yaakov had reasons behind what he did, why he did what he did, and nonetheless, Chazal teach us, even with your reasons, don't do it. Just don't do it. It's not healthy for the family. And they hated him. We see even on a very basic level, even the Shvatim who were B'nai Tzaddik and B'nai Tzaddikos had a very common trait that we all have, at least most of us, which is called jealousy. That we become jealous of other people that we're close with, that we feel that we're on par with. When they become excelled past our level, whether it be whatever it may be, and physically, spiritually, it leads to a natural tendency of kinna, of jealousy, and jealousy, of course, translates to hatred. They couldn't speak peacefully with him, and as we know, we don't have to read the rest of the story. We know exactly what happened. Yosef, the naive child, was sent by his father to go visit them and bring back a report from them. And of course, he was walking unknown to his kidnapping or intended death. Ad Kan from the Chumash. This hatred that the brothers had for Yosef was not just a physical hatred or physical jealousy that, we find today among siblings, and we find today amongst friends, and we find today amongst people, which is very magushim. It has nothing to do with kedusha, it has nothing to do with holiness. It's just purely the animal soul not being able to stand someone else excelling more than them. The brothers' animosity was also tainted with spiritual motivation, spiritual reasons, as they viewed and they felt that Yosef was a threat to them, and they needed to have a future for Klal Yisrael. And therefore, Yosef, one brother who's trying to, so to say, annihilate the rest of the brothers, is a threat to Judaism itself. And therefore, they didn't come to attack Yosef just because of what we can call teenage jealousy. Unfortunately, it's not just teenagers, but this type of jealousy. Jealousy which is purely from the animal soul, from yeshus, from ego, but there was spiritual reasons behind it. To such a point, this is proven from the fact that the Medrash Tanchuma reports, we mentioned this last year in our talk on this subject, that after the whole very emotional and dramatic story, which cannot leave an audience without a tear in their eye, Yosef reveals himself to the brothers, finally tells them, it's really me, I am the king that you're looking at, the viceroy you're looking at, it's me, it's your old brother Yosef, the one who thought who you sold or was killed, etc., it's me. So we would think that the brothers would, as the pasuk seems to say, they would be ashamed, they would feel relief, they would feel happiness, a lot of different jumble of different emotions. Comes the Medrash Tanchuma and gives us an emotion that we would have no hint to in the parsha. And that is that as soon as the brothers heard from Yosef that it's him and he proved his identity, they immediately tried to kill him again. And a malach came from heaven and basically knocked them all out. Threw them to all four corners of the room. They woke up with stars over their heads and they didn't remember what happened. I added that. But the bottom line is that they had remorse over their past and current, very fresh desire to kill Yosef. So this was obviously not just some kind of a physical hatred, but there was some spiritual motivations behind this as well, as we see. Let's now study how Yosef's reaction was. Even amongst brothers, when one brother has done something so evil, so sick, so unforgiving to another brother, we all know in life it leads to estrangement, broken relations. How many families have children who don't speak to each other? Not just because they don't have time or they live for halfway across the world, but bedafka, they don't want to speak. They refuse to speak. In fact, if they find out that their brother is going to a certain other brother's simcha, they will not show up to the simcha. Unfortunately, I'm not talking dreams. I'm talking reality. This happens. It's happening as we speak. And it happens on things a lot less severe than trying to kill them. It's not necessarily because this brother tried to kill me. He had me kidnapped for 30 years. I was in jail. He ruined my whole life, so I won't show up to a simcha that he comes to. Sometimes because he messed me over with money. It's all these other much lesser crimes. But nonetheless, there is a certain nature out there that even family, even blood, our own blood, can be cut off. So we can imagine that Yosef, even if he really worked on himself, really worked on his character, at the very least, because he worked on himself, he wouldn't, take revenge, nekama on them. He wouldn't have them killed, which he could have. He wouldn't do anything of that sort. But he also wouldn't embrace them as much. Keep the peace, stay away. That's sometimes the safest things to do. Just keep the distance. And we see Yosef's reaction was to the contrary. He was makar of them. He showed them open love. He didn't take to heart any of the things that the brothers did to him. The Alter Rebbe points this out in Perek Yud Beis in Tanya, the Perek discussing the Beinoni. And he writes there the following. After he writes about the intended mission of a Beinoni, how he is meant to have different feelings of lust for worldly pleasures and different character flaws that he has to fight in battle. He says this is not only regarding matters of heaven, matters of fear of heaven, Torah and mitzvahs, but as well as matters between man and his friend. This is the word. V'chein b'dvarim shebin adam lechaveira. Miyad sha'oyle lema'alev l'moyach eza tina b'sim. So too the Beinoni has to strive in order to be a Beinoni and not demote himself to the Russia status, which we all know too well, at least myself. Right? As soon as a thought goes up from his heart, meaning his emotion, begins getting a bad feeling about someone, and it begins entering his mind to start entertaining. He didn't say hello to me when I went to the event, and now the mind is starting to work on this information. As soon as a little bit of animosity starts creeping in from the heart to the mind, chas v'shalom, or a little bit of jealousy. He found out the guy just made, a few grand, just made a good deal, while he's busy trying to put butter on his table or bread. A kas, or the guy did something to him, like peda, or anger. Or peda is just upsetness at the person, the man, and all these different common denominator, negative attributes, negative feelings towards another. Eina mekablan klal. The Beinoni doesn't receive it at all. It knocks on the door of his mind, and the door doesn't open. He doesn't entertain these thoughts willingly. On the contrary, the mind controls and governs the spirit of the heart, these feelings of animosity. And he says, this is your complaint about this person, I'm going to do to him the exact opposite. You're saying he didn't say hello to me, and therefore I should feel negative feelings about him. Now because of you, I'm going to say hello to him every single time I see him. I'm going to go out of my way just to say hello to him. To act with the friend on the contrary way, with chesed, with kindness, with love, with affection, more than you normally would. And furthermore, even if it's not just imaginatory, even if it's real stuff this person's been doing, real terrible things, the Beinoni is willing and able to be the status of a Beinoni. He must do this, to accept the suffering and the pain that this individual is causing him to the most extent. Not to get angry, chas v'shalom, not take revenge on him, God forbid. But on the contrary, on the contrary, this is a take on the words of Gomel, Chasadim Tovim, or Gomel Chayavim Tovis. So says the Alter Rebbe that he should pay back for those that are chayav, for those that have done bad to you, real bad, not imaginatory bad, real bad things. You pay them back with good. As the Zayar lengthens and elaborates, to learn from the story of Yosef and how he acted with his brothers. He knew exactly what his brothers wanted to do with him, even now, even right now when he revealed himself. At the very least, it would be understood that he wouldn't want to have anything to do with them. He's not going to kill them, but he doesn't want anything to do with them. But to be makar of them and to let them sit and eat on his table and cry and show real love. How does this happen? How does Yosef do such a thing? How does Yosef accomplish such a thing? Do you have to be a tzaddik to do this? Do you have to be a Beinoni to do this? But this is the lesson the Zohar says that we have to learn, something that is one of the greatest challenges in life. Not just to not take things personally, but to actually repay bad with good. I remember as a kid, a funny story, where my father tried to teach me this lesson at a very young age. When we moved in elementary school, when I was in elementary school, from New York to Miami, so the New Yorkers weren't very happily accepted to the new institution. There were many rivalries to New York, Miami, in the school. I was a third grader, and the kids picked on me all the time. I was the victim of all the bullying. And I got ready with a whole plan of action. I was going to make myself a makeshift weapon to take out the next time that they surround me. And when they're ready, I'm going to take it out, and they're going to flee like flies. So I spoke to my dad about this, and he said, oh, no, don't do that. Take this pack of peanut chews. Tomorrow we'll go and give out one of them to each one of them. So the truth is, the end of the story is not as good as I would want it to be. I did make that weapon, and they never bothered me again. Oh, I didn't give them peanut chews. After I was done with them, I don't think they could chew. Well, it was his advice from Tanya that I didn't take when I was in third grade. So now, Baruch Hashem, we're a little bit older, a little bit wiser, a little bit. And we look back to those times. Maybe that's what we should have done. Maybe the next 10 years I would have had greater friends.
Wait to peanut chews.
The Shvatim, no matter how altruistic and how l'shem shamayim, etc., we can explain that their intentions were, which there are explanations which we brought before. There was also an aspect here of yeshus, of nefesh habahamis, of the animal soul. There was an aspect here of that this shouldn't have been done. It shouldn't have been done this way. They should not have done this to Yosef HaTzadik, no matter what their explanations and reasons were. And because of this, we know, as is brought in Sifrei Kabbalah, not just Sifrei Kabbalah, in Midrashim and in the hymns that we recite on Yom Kippur and in the kinnis that we recite on Tisha B'Av, discussing the Asar Rugei Malchus, which in Kabbalah is explained that they were Gilgulim of the Asar Shvatim, of the 10 Shvatim, and paying for the crimes that their ancestors, the Shvatim, the brothers, did. Interestingly, Yosef was also included in the 10 because he incited it. He's the one that caused them to have these feelings of animosity. So since he was the instigator, so he also had a chelik in the issue. He wasn't free. Well, Binyamin wasn't involved, and Yosef's 2 sons had nothing to do with it. They weren't even born yet. They can't be blamed for it. So Yosef and the rest of the brothers were all Megillah, were all reincarnated to pay the crime. So that's the end of the story from the Chumash, and now we need to start our journey to connect this, or see, is there a connection with Yud Tes Kisleiv, with Chag HaGeula, with the Alter Rebbe? So as Yaakov Avinu had many sons, so too the Maggid had many students. And of the many students of the Maggid, okay, this is a nigun break.
Yosef was blamed even though he was such a victim. He was part of the story.
There's always 2 sides to a story. He wasn't exactly the 100% victim, as we already said. He was an instigator. He incited them. Uh-huh. Okay, we have to look into the calculation, but that's brought down. But Yosef was also one. The Maggid had many students, and naturally, many holy Chassidic courtyards, Chassidic groups came out from the Maggid. Some came from the Baal Shem Tov. Many of today are all from the Maggid. And everyone, if you ask any of them, they all come. But in our tradition in Chabad, we find testimony and historical evidence that the Alter Rebbe was the chosen student of, and everyone has the right to believe that their Rebbe was the next in line after the Maggid, and the Maggid chose them. That's fine, but the evidence doesn't point in that direction. What is the evidence? Well, some are documented, some are Torah Shabbal Peh, stories handed over by Chassidim. Will begin with a very early story. The Alter Rebbe was new in town. He was 20 years old, just walked into Mezrich. As we know, he went, stayed for a few weeks, went back, and then came back again. And he was going to stay for Pesach. It was his first Pesach in Mizrich by the Maggid. It was his first Pesach in Mizrich, and the Alter Rebbe at that time was dirt poor. We're not going to lengthen right now on the background of his poverty, but we know that despite his very, very, very wealthy father-in-law, as much wealthy as he was, as little money he gave to the Alter Rebbe. He cut the Alter Rebbe off. So the Alter Rebbe had no money. The Alter Rebbe wasn't working. He was by the Maggid, learning. Now, they were responsible for supplying different things for the Seder. The only thing they were provided were the matzahs and the wine, but everything else they had to bring, even the vessels, even the cutlery. And the Alter Rebbe had a Kiddush cup that he used during the year, made of glass. He made Kiddush on a glass cup. And for him to go ahead and purchase a new cup for Pesach would be dipping into funds that he didn't have. So he would basically be forced to do what many people do today, called schnorr. Now, the Alter Rebbe didn't have a problem with doing that due to it being beneath his dignity. I'm going to go knock on people's doors for money. Not because of that. But and the opposite extreme. I'm going to place my burden on other people. It's a different perspective. And he therefore decided, based on his halachic calculations, that it would be better for me to kasher the glass cup in a way that's deemed halachically valid by some poskim. We're not going to go into it now. We did a daily halacha on kashering glass for Pesach. You can look at the daily halacha we did then with all the three things in the Rishonim. But one thing is clear. This approach that the Alter Rebbe decided to take to kasher the glass cup is not the Ashkenazi custom, is not the custom that is based on the rulings of Moshe Isserlis the Ramah. Ashkenazim Yitzim B'Yad, that's the opinion that we Ashkenazim follow. So it was basically an off-the-chart opinion in his area of Mizrich, but he decided, due to the circumstances, to be lenient. Okay, they're all sitting the night of the Seder. The Maggid, who was very tall, is standing at the head of the table. He's about to say Kaddish. Kiddush, which is the first part, the first Seder, the first Siman, Kaddish.